In the 17th century, men and women were hunted down as witches or monsters based on the superstitions of others. The church once tortured, hanged, drowned, or even burned people alive to prove that they were in league with the devil. But in San Diego, in 1993, there was no religious rituals or torture, just a modern-day court system to decide if Dale Akiki was a monster.
Well, a friend of mine who took me to, who introduced me to Faith Chapel, she asked me if I wanted to help out in the nursery school. I said, sure. And so I helped, and then I was working in there, and then all of a sudden these accusations came up.
In the late 80s and in the early 90s, prosecutors all over the country were looking for satanic cultists whom they believed were ritually abusing, sexually molesting children, committing animal sacrifice, committing human sacrifice. And they were looking in churches and in preschools and in daycares, and they were looking at Faith Chapel. And what they found was Dale Akiki.
When I stepped off the bus, that was when these two guys that were behind me on the bus stopped me and said, drop the cans and put your hands on top of your head. You're under arrest.
Dale was arrested in May of 1990 when he got off the bus coming home from work one day. And he was taken to jail, and he was charged with 52 counts of ritual child molest. And there were absurd charges that he'd raped and sodomized hundreds of children, that he'd sacrificed animals, that he'd sacrificed babies, that he had fed the children blood. It was crazy.
They also said that I killed a giraffe and an elephant in the classroom, and that I made the kids drink the blood.
I think he was definitely targeted based on his differences, based on his looks and his differences. I think there were people that were uncomfortable with their children being exposed to someone who was different. I think that's the only reason he was there.
When I was born, my mom had the German measles, and I came out having hydrocephalus, and I had what they called a webbed neck, which I had no neck to show, and I had club feet, and I had a strangulated hernia, and I had a droopy eyelid, and they said they didn't give me they said we wouldn't give you 6 months, or they told my mom they wouldn't give me 6 months, and here I am. I'm going to be 50 years old in 2 months, and I'm still going.
My personal opinion on this one was that an opinion somewhere along the lines was formed early as to the guilt of Dale Akiki, and at that point the investigators, including the district attorney's office, had pursued only information that upheld what they believed, and anything that was exculpatory in nature, they just sort of swept to the side.
There was an overzealous prosecutor who handpicked therapists who then brainwashed these children into believing, and their parents, into believing that they had been ritually abused. And the stories the children told, if they were true, would have left mountains of evidence, which the DA looked for and was never able to find. There was not one scintilla of evidence that Dale Akiki had done anything.
In fact, the detective told me that he had taken part in the search warrant on the house, and he told me almost verbatim, Mike, the dirtiest thing we found in his house was a book of 101 toilet jokes. And that's when he proceeded to tell me that it was his belief that Dale was completely innocent.
During Dale's 2.5 years in prison, he found some unlikely protectors.
They were called the Sindo mob, but they were my protectors. And I went to the showers with one of them, and he got on the phone with my mom and told her that we'll take care of Dale. We won't let anything happen to him.
I got the case in August of 1990. My co-counsel, Sue Clemens, joined me in June of 1992. It was the longest criminal case in San Diego at 7 months long, and it was the most expensive at $1.5 million. It was incredibly complex. There were hundreds of lay witnesses. There were dozens of expert witnesses. The jury arguments lasted 3 days.
After 7 long months of trial, Dale took the stand and finally told his side of the story.
Did you ever intentionally, physically hurt any children?
No, I did not.
Have you ever tortured any children?
No.
Have you ever hurt or tortured or killed any animals?
No.
Have you ever killed any babies or children?
No.
Have you ever owned a gun?
No.
Have you ever used a gun to frighten children?
No.
Have you ever owned a sword or a knife that you used to frighten children?
No.
Did you ever fondle children, even without force?
No. I had loved those kids if they were my own, and I treated them that way. And I thought they loved me just like I loved them. And
It was a nightmare, a 2.5-year nightmare. And I was scared stiff because I thought that I wasn't going to make it, that I was going to be found guilty for something I didn't do.
And Dale was about to find out if his nightmare was coming to an end or if it was just beginning.
Verdict. We, the jury, in the above entitled cause, find the defendant, Dale Anthony Akiki, not guilty of the crime of child abuse.
I broke down. I sobbed, on the table, and my lawyers gave me Kleenex, and I just kept on crying. And the next thing I knew, I looked up and I saw all these lights and cameras, and the media was there, and they started asking questions, and I answered some of the questions, and I said, I'm ready to go. And there was a stretch limo waiting for me, and at first I thought it was, my family got it for me, but I found out the next day that it was about 10 guards pitched in for this limo to let me go home in style.
I contacted 10 deputies who right off the bat provided more than enough money to get the limousine ride, so it was no problem at all.
Pretty much after 8 months, we knew in our minds and our hearts already, but we did discuss every count and every child.
I wouldn't trade it for the world. I think my experience is unique, and it was a little bit awe-inspiring to see the system in progress that way and to see it come to the right result. I'm happy to have been a part of it.
We certainly expected an acquittal. We are very, very happy, and really almost impossible to express how happy we are at the speed with which the jury agreed that Dale is absolutely innocent. In the end, it only took this jury 7 hours to give Dale back his freedom.
I believe that it was that God put me through this to show my faith, and I proved it.
For those of you wondering why I made this documentary, if you look closely, you can see Dale sitting between his wife Sharon and his lawyer with her son sitting on her lap. That's me. Dale's been a part of my life since I was 8 months old, and his picture hangs in my house to this day.